Scott 2 weeks ago on this program, before any polls were out, what struck me was his breathtakingly clear message of free market capitalism, including low marginal tax rates. As per John F. Kennedy, where Brown actually ran Kennedy ads for cutting taxes across the board. Kennedy was the first post-World War II supply-side president. Also, of course, the Scott Brown message to vote against Obamacare. Now take a listen to what State Senator Brown told me that evening 2 weeks ago.
Different people, different party, different era, but the same message, and that's across-the-board tax cuts will put more money in people's pockets and create jobs and help solve the fiscal mess that we're in right now.
All right, there you have it. Politically, the bipartisan allure of the fairest and most pro-growth tax cuts to attract Republicans, Democrats, and independent support has always been across-the-board lower tax rates for everybody. Tea Party populism is what I am calling this. You know, this was JFK's genius, which led to the boom in the 1960s. It was also Ronald Reagan's genius, which led to the boom in the 80s and 90s. And by the way, Reagan touted JFK's across-the-board tax cuts, as Scott Brown, precisely to bring in independents and Democrats to the Reagan coalition. Now, the Ted Kennedy Democrats opposed his brother's tax cuts, much to their political detriment for decades. On the other hand, timid Republicans have been shying away from the JFK-Reagan economic message to their detriment. Scott Brown has put this Tea Party message front and center, back on the front burner and back on the kitchen table. Cut taxes, cut spending, across-the-board tax cuts should have been President Obama's first priority. But Obama's ideological stubbornness, his political favoritism, and his crony insistence on punishing winners and rewarding losers, including what's left of big labor, has stopped or prevented the right policies for American economic growth. Scott Brown has stepped into this vacuum with an incredible message. And listen to this. Scott Brown, the populist, drives a pickup truck. That's right, part of his campaign. Now, President Obama, on Sunday in Massachusetts, mocked that pickup truck. Obama says everyone can buy a truck. So Scott Brown comes right back and he says, you know, unfortunately, Mr. President, in this economy, not everyone can buy a pickup truck. And I quote from Mr. Brown, my goal is to change that by cutting spending, lowering taxes, and letting people keep more of their own message. Right on message from Mr. Brown. Scott Brown has also argued that health care is a tax hike and that cap and trade is a tax hike, and he is dead right on this. And if Mr. Brown wins this evening, it could be a giant step forward towards ending the tax hikes, all these proposals to investment, capital gains, payrolls, successful earners, energy, small and large businesses, and maybe we can move toward pro-growth policies and American prosperity by way of true government limits, diminished debt, fair-minded free market solutions, and yes, the aforementioned lower and flatter tax rates. That is all why tonight's election occupies our program, because of its incredible importance. And by the way, let me agree with my friend and former partner Jim Cramer that a Scott Brown victory this evening could trigger a huge stock market rally. The Dow is up almost 100 points today. Healthcare stocks led the way because a Brown victory will most likely end the Obamacare quest. Now, having said all this, I want to get reaction from our highly distinguished panel of experts.